Welcome to A Healthy Curiosity, the podcast that explores what it takes to be well in a busy world with self-care strategies from Chinese medicine. I'm your host, Brodie Welch, here to support you on your journey of health, happiness, and personal evolution. Welcome to A Healthy Curiosity. With me today is my longtime friend, Jen Kind. She and I go all the way back to when we were little baby healers in our early 20s, the very beginning of our career as health professionals. I was just making my transition from the world of activism to the world of healing. And I met Jen when I started at the East-West College of Healing Arts in Portland, Oregon, where we were both in the massage therapy program. So Jen and I have spent a lot of time together, half-dressed and dealing with the issues in the tissues. And so she and I bonded hard and early, and she and I then found ourselves as classmates about 15 years later in an online business training program. So we have been in touch kind of off and on, and she is a powerhouse counselor and psychotherapist coach in Portland, Oregon. We're going to talk today about vulnerability, shame, body image, all kinds of fun and juicy topics. Jen is one of those people who is not afraid to be herself, and she supports her clients in cultivating shame resilience, self-acceptance, and the ability to be kinder to themselves and others, which, if you listen to the show, you know is absolutely part of my mission in life. Jen has a BA in psychology from UC Berkeley and a master's in integral counseling psychology from the California Institute of Integral Studies. She's also got trainings in Hakomi, mindfulness, Myers-Briggs, and she is a certified Daring Way facilitator. So she works with Brene Brown's stuff and is a certified eating psychology coach. Jen, I am so excited to have you on the show today. Welcome.
Thank you. What a lovely introduction. I think I should have people introduce me to things all the time. It's just really nice to hear.
Yeah, once a week.
Right. Just good for the ego, or just nice to hear how you sound in third person.
Yeah. Well, you've done a lot with your life. It's not necessarily always encapsulated in 100 words or less. So
this is very true.
Yeah. Maybe that's could be an assignment out there in podcast land, is that we all just introduce ourselves the way we would like to be introduced.
Right? Love it.
So I'm curious, first off, was East-West a total waste of time? Or does your background in body work actually inform some of the work that you do today?
Oh my God, that's a great question. No, it was definitely not a waste of time. For one thing, I still totally nerd out on anatomy and physiology and kinesiology. And I'm excited when I still remember an origin and insertion point for a muscle or a bone or something. Yeah. But other than that, it's one of those things where I think a lot of people, especially maybe it's like this in all kinds of fields, but I know definitely because I'm in the healing world and I'm around a bunch of healers, that a lot of us can look back and see all these kind of random paths that we went down that all ended up leading us to where we are now, but you could have never guessed that was happening. It looked so random from the beginning. I think Steve Jobs said something like that in his commencement speech at Stanford about how you can't connect the dots going forward, but you can looking backwards, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It all fits together.
Yes. And massage school, I did do massage for a while, but it was definitely something that has ended up informing the way that I work with clients, because I am more somatically oriented. Hakomi is a more somatically based psychotherapy, which means that it's looking at the mind, body, spirit all as one, and really actually looking to the body to tell us a lot of information that our minds are not ready to hear because the body does not lie.
Yeah. And the body is the subconscious mind. The body is our history. And so
I don't know that I would have necessarily, I might have gone in that direction had I not gone to massage school, but it definitely informed just me moving forward, being more in my body and wanting that to be a huge part of the work that I do, with therapy and counseling.
Cool. Yeah. I know that I feel like massage therapy school should be a prerequisite for anybody who works on bodies or with bodies. It's such a training ground for understanding the body-mind connection in a firsthand way.
Tons of people I know, I'll get to know them. They're in the healing world in some way. And then it always comes out oh, you used to be a massage therapist too? Or you went to massage school too? It is sort of an intro, It
is. It's a gateway drug, really.
Yeah, once you get to the issues in the tissues and be half naked,
Yeah. Well, then you just want more tool. For me,
Yes.
like that was my next step for discovering the theory in shiatsu, is like totally falling in love with it and being like, all right, I gotta learn more about this. And then
Yeah.
Chinese medicine having this like total sophisticated way of looking at the body, mind, spirit connection, and being able to really specifically work with points that have particular jobs at releasing these things.
Yeah.
Body.
It's been fun to watch the direction that you've taken with it in that way. It's incredible.
Likewise. It's really, really fun. So I would love to talk a little bit about Brene Brown's work and kind of that for people who may not be familiar, if you could just give us a little intro to what Brene Brown does and what attracted you to that work.
Yeah. If you have not heard of Brene Brown, the best way to start is to Google her TED Talks. She has 2 TED Talks, but her first one is called The Power of Vulnerability.
It's one of the all-time most watched TED Talks, isn't it?
Yeah, multi-millions and millions. Like, I mean, last time I checked, it was like at 25 million viewers, probably at like 30 something now. It's one of the highest viewed. And it totally went viral, which was unexpected for her. It also happens to be, for me, it happened to be the first TED Talk that I watched. So it also opened up a door to like me being the biggest TED Talk nerd. So that was really exciting too. But yeah, so she is a PhD researcher in social work at, let's say, UT Houston, so University of Texas in Houston. And, so she does her PhD work there. She works with grad students. She's a professor. She does that stuff. And her work and research over the last probably, I think it's been about 15 years now, has been around shame, vulnerability, wholeheartedness, worthiness, empathy, self-compassion, just sort of all these different components that she has been able to kind of unlock and figure out what makes us tick in a way that she wasn't expecting. And one of the wonderful things that I think that people really resonate with her in her first TED Talk is that she's super vulnerable in it and talks about how she had a nervous breakdown and didn't like where the research was going because it meant that she would have to be vulnerable and not be this sort of hard ass Texan that she was. And, where you just buck up and you just take life as it comes and da.
And so the fact that she actually had to change because her own work was saying this is what you need to do in order to have connected relationships, right?
Yes, exactly. And she was like, say it isn't so,
Yeah. Do I really have to?
Yeah. And it was life-changing for her. And what's interesting for me is that, so most people, when they watch the TED Talk, everybody pretty much resonates with it. A lot of people think they haven't heard of her, and then they're like, oh, I have seen that TED Talk, right?
Yes.
So most people, it is kind of, they have the reaction of how she sort of had it, where it's like, oh God, I kind of know that I should probably be vulnerable, but I think of it as weakness, and what is shame? And I don't really know. I actually had a reaction that's more rare. My reaction was, yes, this is what I have been feeling my entire life. And finally somebody's explaining it. Because I have been somebody who I didn't know the words to it, but I've been a vulnerable person my whole life, to an extent where sometimes it wasn't necessarily healthy, but in a way that people never could quite understand me, and they were overwhelmed by it. But I couldn't figure out why other people weren't willing to just kind of talk about their imperfections and just talk about their feelings. And so I always sort of felt like an odd duck. And now I'm like, finally, I have been vindicated.
Yes, right. It is in the popular vernacular and in the culture. Yeah.
Yeah. It only took 35 years, but hey, I'm here. Right.
Yeah.
So
I actually had a really similar reaction.
You did?
Yeah.
I love that.
Because it's the kind of thing where,
of course you did.
Well, I mean, maybe that's why we got along so dang well back in the day, just because it's the kind of thing where it's juicy to show up as you are and to be willing to drop the layers of what we think we need to put up to the world in order to be accepted and to be loved. And it's the kind of thing where that's all those facades, those images are kind of a barrier to actually people really knowing us and really loving us. And it's the kind of thing where finally, okay, wow, somebody is advocating for just being brave, right? For first of all, the fact that this can be really hard, but it's really worth it.
Yes, that it's worth it.
I'd love to know, because most people are like, shame. Why would I want to look at shame? So what's the payoff to being willing to look at shame? And first of all, what are the components of shame? I find that shame is different. In Chinese medicine, we think about emotions as qi. And the way to deal with qi is to let it flow through you and then it's gone, right? Like, so if you repress it, it won't go away. And if you
Yeah.
spin a story as to why you need it, it'll stick around, like, but basically if you let it flow, just like a toddler having a temper tantrum, like it's gone and you're over it and you're on to the next present moment. But the thing with shame is that like, it's this social emotion, right? Like it has to do with not living up to a perceived expectation of how we're supposed to be. And so it's almost more like a mental construct that then leads to that flood of embarrassment, wanting to crawl under a rock, and and being able to kind of examine, okay, like what's going on here.
Yeah, that was beautifully expressed. You've just said enough now. No, but I mean, that's so true. It really is like a social emotion. What's interesting about it is that it's a pretty much across the board human emotion across all cultures, all kinds of people, except for a small percentage of people that might be like sociopath, but everybody else experiences shame. So it's like a base kind of core emotion. And it is based on our being hardwired to connect and our fear around not connecting, whether it's that we don't feel like we're good enough, or, people don't like us, or we don't fit in, or whatever it is. Like, we are meant to connect with each other. That's how we thrive in life. And when we feel like for some reason that we can't connect with people, it's usually because shame is present. So one thing that I love about body work, my history, is that shame shows up in the body before anything. And the body will tell you when you're experiencing shame. You just have to learn to listen to it.
So things like, do you mean like getting flushed or getting, things like that? How else does shame show up in the body?
Yeah, it's really fun. So, I mean, shame is so much fun.
Oh my
Come
God,
join
yes.
me.
Right.
The funny thing is I really mean it. So I do these Daring Way workshops, these weekends or these weekly groups where we have a bunch of exercises. And one of the ones that we do is we have like sort of a gingerbread person kind of outline, just a simple drawing that we color in and mark and write on each ourselves of like, where do you feel shame in your body? Because it's different for everybody. But then we can put it on this main one, the group will put it on this main drawing on the wall, and you see the differences, but you also see the similarities. And there are definitely like main points that people feel. So I am definitely somebody who gets flushed. I turn red, like I get really warm. You can get like a pit in your stomach. Some people kind of get butterflies. Some people will get shortness of breath. I mean, it's really fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah, it definitely can go fight, flight, freeze. I'm curious whether the low belly shows up.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
That's actually for me, that's mine. Mine is definitely like constriction around the throat. And then, like kind of gut, sort of low belly stuff. And, some people want to run, some people feel paralyzed, some people want to hide. Like there's just many different ways. And I could go into 7 million descriptions of this. But what the wonderful thing is that it's the commonality. It's the common humanity of like, oh, you experience that too. Like that's the beauty of being, you asked like, what's, is it worth it? Like, what's the point sort of going towards shame? That is part of it, is that when you finally understand that every single person experiences shame, it is so relieving. I mean, not that I want people to experience shame, but shame makes us feel like we are the only person experiencing.
Well, right, because it's the feeling of being the outsider of the tribe, right? And perhaps that connects back with the survival fear of like, if you're kicked out of the tribe, you might die.
Totally. That is exactly what it connects back to. It's biological, it's evolutionary, it's total survival.
So, and that maybe has some evolutionary help in terms of making us get along with each other and making shame sort of a social deterrent for things like killing other people or whatever. But that's usually not where shame comes from in terms of like most people I know have never killed anyone.
Yeah.
And have sort of shame spirals that happen on a regular basis. And just what you said, that common humanity is in my own little pursuit of self-compassion. That's something that I go to time and time again, is reminding myself, like, this happens to everyone sometimes.
Yeah. And that's the work of Kristen Neff. Is that
I love Kristen Neff stuff.
Yeah. And that Brene Brene is really good about using other people's work, like giving them credit.
Sure.
Like she will find stuff in her research, go and see if anybody else has done work on it. If they haven't, then she can, develop her own work around it. But if she finds other people that have done that, then she really likes to talk about them. So that's actually how I discovered Kristen Neff and the work of self-compassion. And that's, is through Brene. And that is one of the components, is the common humanity.
Yeah.
And it really is that, like, you are never alone. And even if somebody has never experienced your exact weird shame thing that you're this certain situation with this person that you got into and you're experiencing right now. Yes, you might be the only person on the planet who's had that exact experience, but somebody has felt like you have felt. Everybody, we all know what sadness feels like. We all know what loneliness feels like. We know pain, we know grief, we know, fear, we know anger. We all know that. We can relate in those ways. And that's where the empathy piece comes in too.
Yes, we can have empathy for each other because we've been there, and we can have empathy for ourselves because we're only human.
Exactly. Yeah. So, oh my gosh, I want to say millions of things, and I feel like I lose my train of thought sometimes. Like I can go on to little tangents. So just
no problem. Well, we can always circle back. Well, so I'm wondering, circling back to what are the payoffs for looking at shame? Okay, so we can maybe feel less alone in our experience when that's happening. What else?
So a major payoff of looking at shame is being able to build resilience to it. So shame will never go away. If you've signed up for a course that talks about, getting rid of shame, that's a little misleading. Shame will never completely go away, but we can, with the work of shame resiliency, we can reduce the intensity, the duration, and the frequency, right? We can reduce the amount of times that it happens, or how often it happens, how intense it is when it happens, and how long it lasts.
Well, that sounds great. What do we do? Walk us through it.
Right? So there's different ways, it's kind of depends on the situation and on the person, but the main antidote to shame is empathy. So this is where it gets tricky, because my favorite quote from Brodie is, shame derives its power from being unspeakable. Unspeakable. Yeah. And it really does. You even talk about some things to somebody like, hey, I want to talk about shame. They're like, I don't want to talk about shame, or I don't experience shame. It's literally unspeakable. People do not want to talk about it ever. They want to run away.
Yeah.
And that is the thing of it. And that is the disconnect, right? Because when we're experiencing shame, we hide or we fight, or we don't want to admit it. We don't want to talk about it. But the thing is that speaking about it is actually how it heals. It's actually how we build resiliency. It's how we connect to other people. Because most people can think about a time, you can look back and think about when maybe somebody was a little vulnerable with us, and maybe they shared something that they, was a flaw, quote unquote flaw of theirs, or something that they did that was bad, or, whatever, they were vulnerable and said, hey, I'm not perfect. Usually we feel more connected to that person.
Exactly.
Maybe there's judgment or whatever, but it's usually like, oh, they're human too, Well,
and really it's that kind of seeing that someone has let their guard down or let that facade of perfection down. They are basically saying, I'm a human being. And so you're much less likely to be aggressive or to take a shot at that person because they've just waved the white flag.
Well, and that's what's so interesting about that, because, vulnerability in our culture, people think of vulnerability as weakness. And actually the definition is, I think it's something like being open to attack, or can't remember what the actual definition is, but it does seem, it comes across that way.
Right. Weak and vulnerable are thought of in the same sentence, right?
Oh, completely. And it's still even with all of Brodie's work, you talk to the majority of people, they think of vulnerability as weakness. What's interesting is that it's the opposite. It's actually the most courageous thing you can do.
I'd love for you to talk more about that, because on Facebook, you are so out there. You are one of the people who is it's not the highlight reel. It's also the things that you're really struggling with. And I've seen you hashtag vulnerability warrior. And I think it's such great language, because it really subverts that common association between vulnerability and weakness. And I'd love to hear, in your life, are there moments where that has really changed things in a personal way?
Yeah.
What's your relationship with vulnerability as a strength?
Yeah, that's a great question. I should say that I had a friend who started calling me the vulnerability warrior. So I got that from her, and I claimed it. Mm-hmm. I love it, because it's so perfect. It's such a perfect pair of words. Yeah, vulnerability it's interesting because, like I said, I could relate to it. And it's something that I think I've been kind of naturally fairly vulnerable my whole life. But my work around it and understanding it and being more intentional with it, since I got introduced to Brodie's work about 6 or 7 years ago, that has been life-changing for me. And then understanding the shame part. So for myself, one thing that I have done is I've always been vulnerable on Facebook. even
Okay,
when it, even
hang
when it
on.
wasn't cool. Yeah.
I'm just going to interject a question of clarity.
Yes.
So when you say the word vulnerable, you don't mean open to attack. You mean
Yes.
what?
Yeah, that's great. This is good because the clarity is very important. So vulnerability is not oversharing. So some people, like when they think of vulnerability, they'll think of somebody who kind of airs like all of their dirty laundry on Facebook. Like if we're looking at social media, for example, right? Or it's somebody who kind of shows all of their quote unquote weaknesses and they are opening themselves up to attack, right? Those things do still exist, but those are not vulnerable. That's not a healthy version of vulnerability. So a healthy version of vulnerability is really just being able to say, and I'm probably giving personal examples might help, but just being able to say, hey, I made a mistake, or I'm feeling, scared over here, or I'm afraid that you don't like me, or I'm flawed in this way. There's a part of myself that is really struggling with this. Like there's so many ways to say that. And the thing about the myth that vulnerability is weakness, vulnerability and courage are actually two sides of the same coin, because you literally cannot be courageous without being vulnerable. And you cannot be vulnerable without being courageous. Because courage actually, so the Latin root is cur, which is of the heart. And when we are courageous, if it was easy to do and it didn't take vulnerability, it wouldn't be courage. It wouldn't be courageous, right? Like it just wouldn't be brave, right? You'd be like, whatever, you just like rock that and no problem. It wouldn't be a big deal.
Yeah, it takes courage to face fear.
Yes, exactly. It's not about getting rid of the fear. It's about being able to like be with the fear and face it. And that is what bravery and courage and all of those things are really about. But this kind of explains a different way. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, when you said those phrases really resonates in my experience, where the time that I have felt the most hurt or rejected, especially in like my journey of marrying a widower and suddenly finding myself with stepkids, it being on me to forge those bonds, feeling at times rejected and being able to own it in the moment. And, so it's like ordinary teenage behavior, like just, like not acknowledging somebody when they walk in the room. It's like, to me, just like it's connected to like this bigger story about needing to belong and needing to be accepted, and being able to be like, hey, that hurt my feelings because I want you to like me so much, like it's so important to me that we connect, and, and being able to stand in that place of like tearful vulnerability. I feel like those were some really pivotal moments for me in terms of breaking down what could have been like an ongoing pattern of hostility and coldness. And so I feel like being vulnerable was really pivotal in forging bonds with my Insta kids.
Insta kids.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's just incredible that you were able to do that, especially with teenagers, because they need it more than anything. Because that's the thing, when we have shame or fear, our defenses come up, right? We have all these strategies, and some of them are helpful and some of them are not. And teenagers are really showing up with them.
And then we're transported back to, like, for example, my teenagehood, where I was not a cool kid, and I,
I just want to be liked. Yeah,
exactly. And so being able to feel that flood of like, okay, here I am again being rejected, and I get to stand in my small, weak little emotions, like that, and then realize like, oh wow, but actually, if I'm able to give myself empathy and I'm able to actually stay in this room and admit what's going on, this is going to shift.
And I'm sure it softened them, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's the thing. It's like,
field.
Yeah, because our defenses are up. We're literally armored up. Whenever I say literally now, I'm like, really? That word, I'm learning that word, and I know they've changed the definition.
I think in Reichian terms, right? There's armoring is a word we're allowed to use when it comes to the body tightening and the and the energy tightening. We can feel that. It's
and Brene talks about shame shields and how her work is around going into the arena and kind of being a gladiator and armoring up. That's just how she has described the whole story of her work. And so it is very much like we go into battle, quote unquote, and battle can be like just navigating the Insta kids and, and teenage hormones and them being not ready for a stepmom or whatever. And we can go with our defenses up. We all are like that. But once one person can just start to soften, it's like you're setting down your armor, you're setting down your weapon. Even if the other people aren't quite ready to just put down their armor or their weapon, they relax.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody drops their shoulders, right? Like there's like a softening, like, I can imagine also for the teens, being able to be like, oh, well, she's an adult and she's actually worried that we're not going to like her.
Right.
Like it's just so mind blowing and so paradigm shifting.
Yes.
That, you know, and that like, and for them, what it really is saying is that you're saying like, I just want to belong. I want to be loved. I want to be accepted for who I am, which is the desire of every human being on the planet.
Everyone.
And so everyone's like, oh, me too. You're afraid of that too? Right? It's the softening.
This episode of A Healthy Curiosity is brought to you by the coaching branch of BrodieWelch.com. Yes, that is me. In early 2017, I'm going to be opening up my schedule to coach just a handful of people one-on-one who are interested in showing up differently in the world. If you're wanting to feel more calm, confident, have more energy, ditch an old pattern, set a boundary, or change the one thing that you know will change everything, I would love to support you. Deep, transformative change can be hard, and it's way easier when you have someone in your corner who believes in you, who can amplify your strength, and who has lots of tools in her toolbox. If you'd like that person to be me, email me at Brodie@BrodieWelch.com. That's Brodie with an IE and Welch with a CH, and let me know that you're interested. Now back to today's show. What are some of the ways that we keep the armor on, that we avoid vulnerability to try to protect ourselves? How do we do that? How does that show up?
Yeah, so many ways. So some people tend to be more of like fighters, right? So if they get triggered, they get upset about something for whatever reason, they are more on the offense and on the defense. They tend to be more aggressive. They go towards anger, right? Or they can even, some people will be more indifferent, like, well, you can't hurt me. Sort of this.
Okay, so
feeling.
there's the cold detachment and there's the go on the attack.
Yep. And then there's also and these are kind of the main ways, but obviously there's different nuances. Then there's also the sort of the hiding, getting small, like withdrawn, people that kind of go more withdrawn. Sometimes people will really internalize their sort of shame, and their armor becomes like self-sabotage, destructive behaviors, addiction, things like that. And then there's also sort of the more people-pleasing, which is sort of going towards the fight, but like with this way of almost being like, that's okay, I'll just do whatever you want, just wanting to be liked, right? So there's these tons of different strategies, and they can manifest in all kinds of ways. It's not that we all go towards one. We usually have a primary, but then we can dabble in all of them as well.
Okay. So just to elucidate those last couple of points, you had some people can basically just numb out, perhaps self-soothe and just kind of withdraw, and other people can do the fall on their sword. I'll change in whatever way you need me to change, and not really assert what they need.
Yeah. And it's great you said numb out, because really that's, if you look at our culture, and that's part of the original TED Talk that Brodie did, which was, now it's been almost 7 years ago. So it was talked about how our cohort, meaning like in America, the people that are around right now, we are the most medicated. She talks about overweight stuff, which I have a little bit of a problem with the way that she talks about it, but just that we are, we have a country of people that are quite unhealthy and overweight. We're more medicated. We're more numbed out. And now, even since she's had that talk, I mean, the way that we use the internet and TV and just all of these different addictions that we all have, all of that numbing, whether it looks like withdrawing or getting angry or whatever it looks like, whether it's food, whatever substance or person or thing that is all coming from shame and not being able to be vulnerable, all of it.
So if we're going to binge on Netflix or cookies or alcohol or whatever, would that be a useful time to ask, like, what's going on here? What am I ashamed of?
Yes. And that's, that's definitely like a practice of understanding. And I really like to highlight the difference between comforting and numbing, because I love watching Netflix. Like, I'm a binge watcher. And there are times where I am definitely like, I'm numbing. I just watched 5 episodes of something. And that is okay, right? That's okay. I definitely have gotten more towards where I can be more comforting. I can say, well, I'm going to watch a couple of episodes and then I'm going to go take a walk, or I'm going to go paint, or just trying to understand. I want to sit with what's happening. Like, what am I actually trying to avoid right now?
And there's a real difference between helping to make yourself feel better in the moment versus hiding from something. And the difference is, like, you're willing to revisit that. Like, okay, I don't have the bandwidth for this right now, but I might in 90 minutes or
yeah. Well, sometimes you do. You need to be able to get to the, like sometimes the decompression is watching Netflix or
Sure.
doing something to kind of distract, but knowing that it's more to get resourced to then be able to handle whatever it is, as opposed to just like ignoring it forever and repressing it, trying to repress it, which doesn't actually work.
No, funny.
Because it shows up in the body.
Exactly.
Yeah. You
Right.
know better than anybody. It shows up in the body. Yeah.
It can, for sure.
Yeah.
So if someone wants to work on being less guarded and being more authentic and vulnerable and wholehearted, to use Brene Brown's word, what are some of the skills that they need to develop and how do they go about doing that?
Yeah. Well, number one, you do not have to be vulnerable around everybody. There are some people in our lives that are not safe to be vulnerable around. And those are people that tend to actually kind of take vulnerability as a place to attack, right? You kind of hear about, it's like, well, whenever I tell them my weakness, they sort of turn it against me, right? You don't want to be vulnerable with people.
Yeah, that person does not deserve your trust.
No. Yeah, I mean, just because it's not going to work, it's going to backfire, right? So if somebody can't sort of hold you with empathy or non-judgment or just being able to even just listen and hold space, they need to earn your trust and your ability to be vulnerable with them. So what I always recommend is when people are kind of just dabbling in vulnerability and starting to do this work is really name, a small list for yourself of 3 or 4 good, close people, whether it's your partner, whether it's a parent, a best friend, a coworker. It could even be, as a therapist, I am definitely many people's vulnerability place, right? Like I have my clients come in and can be vulnerable with me and they know that they can do that 100%. It's half of the reason they're there. So I highly recommend that as well. Your healer, whoever, people that you can be vulnerable around, and start with them and start small.
Start in a safe place. Yeah. And with a small step. Okay, great.
Yeah. Start small around, it's almost like starting small with shame stuff. Like, we can have shame about like who we are as a person. And then we can have shame about like the Netflix show that we choose to watch that other people think is stupid, right?
Yes.
And now as I say that, shame is different for everybody. That kind of thing could cause shame for one person and not for another. And that could cause like shame of worthiness for one person and then just kind of like more like embarrassment for another person, which is another thing to clarify is the differences between shame, guilt, embarrassment, and humiliation. I don't know if you want me to go into that. It's a little bit of a thing, but yeah.
Well, what I'd love to know, that especially around shame, is there a connection between shame and perfectionism?
Oh my God, yes. Sorry.
Because I know like Brene Brown describes shame in this gendered way. And she talks about how basically like all men have to do to avoid shame is to feel strong all the time, or that shame. They feel shame when they feel that they're not strong. And women feel shame when we are not the competing expectations about who we're supposed to be, which she says is this straitjacket connected with being thin, modest, nice, sexy, and supportive, or those are some things that I kind of pulled from her book, and so yeah, we're supposed to, like, women especially have this straitjacket, in Brene Brown's word. And I know a lot of women, myself included, who would describe themselves as feminists, who know that who they are is far more important than how they look, who are rocking their careers, who have rich spiritual lives, who are great parents, and who feel like everything would be better if they could lose 10 pounds. Like just sort of like the shame around body image as being like so important. It is paralyzing for women, and it often feels to me like a conspiracy, like if women stop hating their bodies and focus on like what's actually going on, like the world would change.
Oh, I could go into the whole, I'm not even a conspiracy theorist, but I agree with you. Don't even get me started on the diet industry. Like, I mean, truly it is, as an eating psychology coach, that's a whole other, and that's like a newer part of my work, is going into that work with people. And yes, if we could not be so distracted by our bodies and how they look, we would be way more ahead in taking over the world like we need to, but really, I mean, I've heard like, I wish I could remember this one really awesome, I think it was a teen girl who did some slam poetry around the actual idea of keeping women small, like literally, and also figuratively, right? Of keeping us quiet and small and, thin, and just how it really, the stuff with our bodies has been it's been a form of oppression.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And
And yeah, go ahead.
And so women who can buy into this and know this, we still are being flooded with images about how we're supposed to look, right?
Of
And so
course.
so let's say we're going through a rough time or whatever, like where there's some weight gain, and looking at that with shame, right? Like that's really natural. I see this all the time in my practice, and it's the kind of thing where it's like it's already hard enough, and then there's this layer of shame to get through. What advice do you have for people who may be struggling with those issues?
Yeah. Well, I just want to say, I'm with you, sister.
Yeah.
I mean, it really, shame is hard enough to deal with, and weight stuff is hard enough to deal with, but we have, or, body image stuff. You're right. I mean, we are inundated. Even if you are able to sort of somehow, not see magazine covers and not see this. And like, I have a whole Facebook feed, full of body positive stuff. I still am inundated. You cannot avoid the sort of model of perfection that our culture has put on women. And it's getting better, but it's a really slow process.
Yes.
So, I mean, one thing I really do encourage is to do your best to surround yourself with more body positive, body acceptance images, whether it's your Instagram feed or your social media or, something like that, because it's literally a matter of just like rewiring our brains by seeing different images. Because you can be as strong as you want and be like, my weight doesn't define me. But if you're seeing like thin models as the ultimate ideal over and over again, it's practically impossible to like not have that ideal in your mind, right? So that's one thing. And then, I mean, my work around my body and body image and weight, and it's a long process, but it's really was my biggest tool for that has been the Health at Every Size movement personally.
Nice.
I have a lot of respect for the woman who started it and wrote books is Linda Bacon. And yes, it is odd that her last name is Bacon. I don't know why it always makes me laugh, but she's great. She's fantastic. And that work is life-changing, to be able to look at our bodies as we just want to be able to feel really good in them and be healthy. And health can be defined in different ways as well, because I also get really triggered by health shaming. I feel like there's a lot of that in our culture as well. So I'm tentative the way that I talk about it, but being able to really love your body in everything that it can do, and actually loving yourself into health instead of hating yourself into health, because that's actually not a thing. You can't actually hate yourself into health, even though our culture tells us you can.
Yeah. What do you mean by health shaming?
Yeah. Oh God. That's like a whole podcast in itself. There's so many different ways that it can happen, but
implying that it's someone's fault that they're not totally healthy.
Yeah. Well, just the idea that I have a friend who was in the field and she said something brilliant. Oh, health is not a moral imperative. And I was like, what? Like it took me a second to be like, what does that even mean? Mm-hmm. And it is the idea that it's not like required for us to be healthy. I want people to be healthy. Trust me, I want to be healthy. But the idea that it's like this thing that we have to strive towards, it's like another version of perfectionism. It can get like that for people, right? It's this judgment of, if you are not healthy, you are a bad person. That is not what we want, because that doesn't help either. Because then that leans towards people being really obsessed with food or really obsessed with their health and exercise to a way that's compulsive and not healthy, not like emotionally healthy and not physically healthy at times. So honestly, this work is so complex. It's so multi-layered, and like, I'm still diving into it and figuring it out. And I can imagine in your practice, you must come across all kinds of different versions of all of this.
Yeah, we really could do several podcasts on this topic.
Right.
Getting back to the skills needed in order to really do the work that allows us to be vulnerable and shame resilient, we need empathy. We need to counter the cultural messages. It seems like what you're saying is to kind of like hack our environment so that it reflects our values. Like
totally, because we have that ability now.
Yeah.
I mean, to a certain extent, we're still going to get inundated, but with social media and even just being around like-minded people or people that inspire you, we can hack our environment in a way, and it's
Yeah.
really powerful, and it makes a huge difference.
Anything else in that?
Yeah. So it's, great to have you reflect. My mind goes all over the places. It's really nice when people will break things down to step by step. So I like it when somebody does it with my own work, because then I'm like, oh yeah, I know. So what I love is when you brought up the empathy piece, it reminds me that one thing that's really important about developing empathy towards other people and us receiving empathy from other people is that the more that we can have empathy for other people, the more our self-compassion gets stronger, because self-compassion is actually just empathy turned inwards.
Yes.
So the more we develop self-compassion, the more empathy we have for other people, and vice versa. And so the more if we're feeling shame and we can go to that trusted person and get some empathy and just get some love and holding and just, comfort, the more that we start to feel better about ourselves and we're okay with the way that we are and we're more accepting. So going back to kind of the Krista Neff work of self-compassion, so a big part of the shame resilience work is the self-compassion work, which the three components of the self-compassion work are mindfulness, common humanity, and kindness. And mindfulness is a huge foundation of my work, of being able to just be self-aware, to start understanding and listening to your body and your thoughts in each moment and understand what's happening. Like, oh, wow, I can, as I'm talking to you right now, I can feel, oh, I'm a little nervous because I'm on a podcast and I want to do it really well, and I get a funny voice. So, right. And I can notice, I can hear my dog on the floor, sleeping, and I can feel like I'm parched, and I can, feel tension in my shoulders from the way that I slept last night. But I can do all of that while I'm talking to you, right? That's just being mindful in the moment.
And so you could translate mindful as body aware as well,
yes,
right?
Totally.
Using your body to anchor you to the present moment, which is a central premise of Qigong, right?
Yes.
Sort of body-centered awareness, being grounded in your body, not using meditation to transcend the body, but actually being in it and tuning into your senses as a way of grounding yourself in the present.
Yeah. And a huge key component of mindfulness too, that a lot of people don't realize, is that it's not just the being aware, but it's also without judgment. Right?
Without judgment.
Yeah. It's not like, oh, look, my shoulders are tense because I'm just I need to sleep better.
You should relax. Yeah. No.
Right. Yeah, what is wrong with you?
I am health shaming you right now.
Yeah, I was about to say. I mean, that's kind of where health shaming can come in, right?
Yeah,
is our own awareness of something that's bad or wrong with us.
Right. And it's just one thing to be okay, yeah, I didn't sleep well last night, I might do it differently tonight, is a much kinder way of
maybe I'll use my foam roller tonight, and I'll just make sure that that I sleep better, whatever, So that's a really key place with mindfulness. And yes, my tool with my clients and myself with mindfulness is definitely to go towards the body first, because our thoughts are very complex. So going towards the body is going to help us start to get more information and to slow down. And then the kindness, the idea of the kindness for self-compassion. And really, that's a very simple theory of, when we think about the ways that we talk to ourselves and how mean we are, would we ever talk that way towards somebody that we love? Most likely not.
Yeah.
And can we actually treat ourselves like we would treat our most loved ones,
Yeah, I've been working on that one for a while.
Yeah.
I'm not there yet, but
but there is no there.
Yeah.
There is no there. It's all of this stuff is a practice. It doesn't ever end.
Oh, that's a kind way of looking at it.
Well, my last name is Kind. So,
yes.
Truly though, I mean, really it is. All of this stuff is a practice. This is a lifelong practice. There's no end point. Sometimes people are like, oh my God, it's a lifelong practice. And I'm like, trust me, that's a relief. Trust me, it is. Because then it just becomes part of who you are and how you operate. I mean, my self-compassion, my practice of self-compassion is, a lot of it's on autopilot now. It's natural for me. And it used to be so difficult for me. Doesn't mean I still struggle with it in many ways, but it's truly become a practice, and it's a natural wiring that my brain has created.
Oh, that's so cool. And that's just with repetition.
Totally.
Awesome.
It's just with doing it.
Yep. Just that is the rewiring of the brain. It is.
Yeah.
It's
so subtle, and it bothers people because they just want a magic pill. But the wiring of the brain, it's subtle, and then it's not. And then it's just there, and it's amazing.
It's a groove that you've carved at that point.
Totally. And it's use dependent. Any wiring in our brain is use dependent.
Right. If it's not used, it's pruned.
Yep. Yeah.
I know that I have taken up a lot of your time today. I have just
Aw.
2 more questions for you, Jen.
Yeah.
What advice would you have for your 22-year-old self?
I love that question. Yes, 22. When we met.
Or whatever it was that were
Which
you
is,
22? I think
yeah,
you were 22. Yeah.
yeah, I was
Okay.
22, right? And you're a couple years younger than me, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I was 21, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, I just got into like dating that one guy, but like maybe don't date him. But yeah, no advice for a 22-year-old self. I mean, honestly, just to be kinder to myself, really, and to trust my intuition more.
Nice. Is that what you would also
Yeah.
say to my 21-year-old self?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think I could say that to every single
Yeah.
person on
I,
every day of their lives, and it would just never be enough.
I think it's
Like
good
in a good way.
advice.
Yeah.
Yes, I love that advice. My last
Yeah.
question is if people are interested in staying connected with you, what's the best way for them to
Yeah.
do that?
Yes. You can find me on most of the social media things: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. The user handle name thing, whatever, is Kindful Rebel, all just Kindful Rebel. And then my website, which is under construction, but about to be all new and shiny and pretty, is jenniferkind.com.
And I'll make sure that those get into the show notes
Thank
for
you.
everyone. Jen,
Yeah.
thank you so much. This was a blast.
Oh my gosh. Totally. I mean, I could talk for hours. Thanks for having me.
So welcome. Thanks for listening today. For more episodes of A Healthy Curiosity, you can visit the iTunes store. If you appreciated today's show, please leave us a review. This helps other people to find the podcast. You could also head to brodiewelch.com, where you can find free self-care resources, learn more about Chinese medicine, and let me know what you'd like to hear about on future episodes. I'd love to hear from you. Till next time, be good to yourself.